Chinese private tutoring firms are back in business after a years-long crackdown. A Chinese hack targets the 2024 US presidential candidates' campaigns, and Tesla is feeling the heat from Chinese electric vehicles. Then more on this week's China News headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell, and this episode is sponsored by Surfshark. Whenever you go online, you should be using a VPN like Surfshark to cover your tracks and protect your identity. I'll tell you more at the end. So we are just days away from the 2024 US election, and what better way to celebrate it than a major Chinese hack breaching parts of the US telecom system and targeting candidates' campaigns. Because it wouldn't be a major election in America without interference from Russia, Iran, and China. I wouldn't be surprised if their interference is why Richard Goodall won the last season of America's Got Talent when the grand prize should have clearly gone to Hakuna Matata acrobats. The election was rigged, I tells ya. The FBI and Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency last Friday said they were investigating unauthorized access to commercial telecommunications infrastructure and attributed the attack to Chinese-affiliated actors. The affected companies were immediately notified and offered assistance, but there could be more victims out there. An investigation is still underway. China, of course, denies being part of any such hack, as it always denies any wrongdoing whatsoever. The Chinese embassy in Washington dismissed the U.S. hacking allegations as disinformation and responded by calling the U.S. the origin and the biggest perpetrator of cyber attacks, continuing its ongoing attempt to be just about as mature as a 6-year-old saying, "Nuh-uh, you are." The hack specifically targeted data from phones used by presidential candidate Donald Trump, his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, and staff members of both Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign and Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the majority leader. Because when it comes to gathering intel, the Chinese Communist Party does not choose sides. Investigators are still determining what information, if any, might have been seized from the presidential campaigns. But the FBI isn't commenting on the breach, making them the only people in America right now not commenting on the presidential campaign. The vice president isn't commenting on the hack either, while Trump's campaign communications director blamed Harris for the attack, saying this is the continuation of election interference by Kamala Harris and Democrats who will stop at nothing, including emboldening China and Iran attacking critical American infrastructure to prevent President Trump from returning to the White House. Their dangerous and violent rhetoric has given permission to those who wish to harm President Trump. Because Russian, Chinese, and Iranian hackers would never try targeting elections when Trump was in office, they said so, and we can trust them. A 61-year-old woman involved in trafficking children has been sentenced to death in China. Or rather, a court in the country upheld her death sentence after a retrial. Yu Huaying trafficked an estimated 17 children in the 1990s in a case that gripped the nation. She first went to court in 2023, but evidence has since emerged that she kidnapped and sold more children than originally believed. Her first victim was her own son. She sold him for just $701, according to Chinese state media outlets. Here is where I'd normally insert a joke, but with the story this dark, I think it's time for a China Uncensored mental health break. Oh, look at all those puppies. Their mothers love them and would never sell them off for a preposterously low amount. Then again, puppy farms exist. But Yu wasn't finished there. Yu went on to abduct 17 children from 12 families, with 5 of the families losing 2 children at once. The case first came to light in 2002, when one of the victims, named Yang Niuhua, came forward. Yang was born in the southern Guizhou province, but was kidnapped from her family in 1995 and sold to another family for $350. Only $350. Not only is Yu a horrible person, she's also a horrible businesswoman. Many of the victims' families spent years searching for their children, and some suffered severe depression. Sadly, that includes Yang's own parents, who died a few years after their daughter was taken. More puppies! According to court documents, between 1993 and 2003, Yu collaborated with 2 other men, named Wang Jiawen and Gong Xianliang, who died after Yu's arrest and was the father of her trafficked son. Reports in the Chinese state media say the trio found buyers for the children through introduction from others. The children would be taken to the city of Handan in northern Hebei province, which is a pretty long way from Guizhou. Normally, the death penalty is reserved for the most serious of crimes in China, such as rape, murder, and drug trafficking, while human traffickers generally are fined and face between 5 to 10 years in prison, because selling drugs to adults who choose to buy them, that's death-worthy. But selling children, slap on the wrist. But due to the seriousness of this case, Yu was given a harsher sentence, and indeed, she has confessed to her crimes. The court also added that her political rights were stripped and her personal property would be confiscated. Nice to hear about communists stripping people of their rights and property for a good reason, for once. Reactions on Chinese social media have largely been supportive of the results of the trial, and since trials in China are usually political, I'm sure public sentiment played a big role in the decision. After all, when it comes to human trafficking, you can't really beat the CCP, and they're not on trial. And after the break, the CCP calls Australia systemically racist. Welcome back. Chinese electronics company Xiaomi is challenging Tesla with an allegedly faster electric vehicle. The company unveiled a luxury version of its SU7 Ultra electric sports car last Tuesday, saying the $114,000 model would rank as the fastest four-door car in production in a direct challenge to Tesla and Porsche. But will it also have the most important feature in any Tesla, the Whoopee Cushion app? Xiaomi is better known for producing smartphones and home appliances, but back in March, it entered China's lucrative EV market with its Porsche lookalike, the SU7, which started around $30,000. Not sure if I'd trust a car from a company that makes smartphones. If it's anything like my iPhone, it'll be very exciting at first, but then constantly bug me for updates and need to be replaced after 2 years. The company aims to put 120,000 such vehicles on the road by year's end, with the first SU7 Ultras being delivered by March. Last Tuesday, it began making orders and said it had received more than 3,600 of them in the first 10 minutes after the car's debut. Lei Jun, Xiaomi's CEO, who holds near celebrity status in China, said he was inspired to launch the EVs by the Trump administration's 2021 sanctions on the company. He also announced pricing that put the car on par with Tesla's Model S Plaid, intending to compete more on performance rather than cost. Indeed, at Germany's grueling Nürburgring track, the SU7 Ultra prototype did set a record time. Given that Elon Musk has been trying to get in good with China, that might not be a great sign for his business. You'd think his loyalty would save him, but to that, all China has to say is... Chinese private tutoring firms are slowly emerging from the shadows after a years-long crackdown. Back in 2021, the CCP launched a government crackdown known as the Double Reduction Policy, which prohibited for-profit tutoring in core school subjects, with the aim of easing educational and financial pressures on parents and students, and possibly sparking a baby boom. Before the crackdown, Beijing's for-profit tutoring sector was valued at $100 billion, and its three biggest players employed 170,000 people. The industry remains somewhat resilient and hard to fully eliminate, but the move wiped billions of dollars off the market value of several major companies. This also created thousands of job losses. In China's high-pressure education system, a lot of parents rely on these services for their children to succeed academically, which can lead to great jobs in the future or acceptance into the country's top higher learning institutions. But it's unlikely that the CCP will ever admit that its crackdown was too harsh. In fact, China's education ministry isn't even commenting on its evolving approach to the tutoring industry. Or to put it another way, they refuse to educate its citizens about its approach to education. Beijing is quietly easing regulatory pressure on private tutoring operators, as it seems to ease the country's flagging economy. Lin Song, chief economist for Greater China at ING, said that there would be a tacit easing back towards a looser regulatory stance. The overall policy environment has shifted from restrictive to supportive, as the main goal now is stabilization. And Claudia Wang, who leads the Asia education practice at consulting group Oliver Wyman, says that after eliminating a few low-quality players, the government was pinning hope on the education sector to help address super high youth unemployment. So the CCP won't admit it was wrong, it's just undoing all the idiotic things they did to try and counteract all the harm they caused. Like strategic geniuses. The number of schools, operating centers, and positions for employment in private tutoring firms have risen, which would seem to back up these hopes. And this would also be in line with the CCP's stated, albeit vague, plans to boost the economy. I'd say the CCP should get a tutor to help them with this, but history has shown they never learn their lesson. China is accusing Australia of being plagued by systemic racism. On October 22nd, James Larson, Australia's UN ambassador, delivered a joint statement on behalf of 15 countries, including New Zealand, Japan, the US, and the UK, calling on Beijing to address the findings of a UN assessment that concluded there have been serious human rights violations in Tibet and Xinjiang. Yeah, I'm sure the Uyghurs and Tibetans suffering the CCP's cultural genocide are going to be saved by even more toothless United Nations statements of concern. But instead of checking out that assessment or abiding by it, the CCP predictably turned to its tried and true strategy of lashing out like a 6-year-old saying, "Nuh-uh, you are." Lin Jian, China's foreign ministry spokesman, declared that Xinjiang and Tibet are internal affairs and said that Australia, long plagued by systemic racism and hate crimes, has severely violated the rights of refugees and immigrants and left indigenous people with vulnerable living conditions. Ah, what aboutism. The last defense of someone facing an intervention and trying desperately to avoid being rehabilitated. He then went on to accuse Australian troops of committing war crimes in Afghanistan and other countries and said the West was being hypocritical regarding human rights abuses. This is nothing new for the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, it's part of their playbook. But it's also possible because the West keeps issuing meaningless statements of concern about the CCP's human rights violations and regional aggression, while still doing business with China. No wonder Beijing keeps acting this way. Without consequences, they'll keep committing crimes even bigger than Richard Goodall winning America's Got Talent over Hakuna Matata acrobats. And did you know that every time you go online, everything you do is potentially compromised? And that's why no matter where you live, no matter what you do online, you should always be keeping your internet activity private with a VPN like Surfshark. If you're not taking active steps to protect yourself, everything you do is being tracked and logged by the websites you visit, your internet service provider, and often by your own government. Using a VPN makes you harder to track. Surfshark has servers you can connect to in over 100 countries, more than any other VPN. That makes your connection faster and more reliable. Plus, Surfshark has top-of-the-line encryption and a no-logs policy, meaning they don't collect your browsing data. That's why Surfshark was rated Editor's Choice for the best VPN for privacy and security by PC Mag. So check out Surfshark. With just one Surfshark account, you can connect as many devices as you want. It also comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So try out Surfshark risk-free. Go to surfshark.com/uncensored to get up to 4 months extra. That's surfshark.com/uncensored. The link is in the description below. And before YouTube's algorithm sends you off to some random video, to get around YouTube censorship, I'm hiding controversial topics in gaming content. Check out the latest about the grooming of adolescents in the new game Life is Strange Double Exposure. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.